Welcome, everybody. With all the talk on the presidential campaigns, primary campaigns about socialism and capitalism and the tension, there's a book right now that says you both can live with each other. The Third Way is the name of the book, and the co-author of that is Upendra Chivukula, a former assemblyman for many years, about 13 years in the state legislature, where I knew you. You're also now on the Board of Public Utilities, regulating a lot of the rates and structures and stuff that the state has for power companies and the like. So you've written a book that says, and you're a Democrat, I should note that as well here, but you've written a book that says, with socialism in the discussion now with Bernie Sanders' campaign, but also capitalism is personified by, say, I don't know, Donald Trump and some of the others on here. You say it need not be both, but we are merging to another model anyway, and you call it the third way.
Correct. That's correct. Yeah. No, when President Ronald Reagan talked about capitalism and ownership, broad-based ownership, it started with our founding fathers, whether it's Washington, Adams, Jefferson, and Madison. They all talked about that. And Bernie Sanders also talked about ownership of employees.
In your book, when you talk about this, you say that there's labor, there's management, and there's the 1% that seem to own everything. You said that's got to change anyway, despite what happens in a presidential campaign or the policies of the next president. It is going to change, and it should change. How?
Well, you know, you saw what happened with Occupy Wall Street, a lot of the movement, but there was no direction for them. And I think this book provides that direction, what you can do. You can not only have the concentrated capitalism, you can transform that into inclusive capitalism. You make more people owners, and in addition to your wages at work, you also get a piece of the company, that ownership, that you are building more capitalists, so that way the capitalism thrives. So,
but how is that new? Because a lot of companies have stock options for their employees and the like, many very big companies, and you own the company when you own shares of the company, and a lot of companies give us preferred shares, meaning that discounted shares and the like. So for a lot of companies, they actually have this already.
Actually, the Silicon Valley is built on the concept, whether it's Microsoft, Cisco, all these companies are built on that. But I think the key, what happened is that the federal government was giving some incentives. Over a period of time, Bush administration and the Clinton administration took away a lot of the funding because of the funding restraints and constraints. That's why what we are suggesting in the book is that you got to revitalize that. The idea that has worked, let's expand it. Right now, you have only 10,000 companies that offer employee ownership. About 15 million Americans benefit from that. Why not expand it so that 150 million Americans can benefit from that?
And expand it with tax incentives by the government?
Yeah, basically what it is, the United States has the highest corporate tax rate, 35%. We're saying that cut that in 50%, by 50%, and use that fund.
You'd be down about 17%, 18%.
Use that 17.5% so that way the companies, only companies that provide employee ownership, you can only give to them. And in the urban areas where there's 50% unemployment, urban and rural areas where 50% youth unemployment, if we can give 100% tax incentive, so that way more companies can come in, invest, and also make the local people owners of that.
And one of the things that Democrats, and you're a Democrat, you frequently do and have been doing, is raising the minimum wage over time in America as a way to sort of make things equal in some way, right? But now with the study of economics and talking also about the difference between capitalism and socialism, which you're talking here about where you're going to go, if in the legislature they're talking about raising that minimum wage right now to $15, right? When you look at it as someone who's left the legislature now, left it as a Democrat that usually support these things, when you look at it from where you are here with this book on the model that you really want to see that you think works, do you think minimum wage rises to whatever the number is, let's call it the one that's before everybody now, $15, really is the solution?
No, I don't think so. I think federal government, we have raised minimum wage 29 times, and nothing has changed. The income disparity is continuing to grow. There are two things that are needed. One is the wages, the other one is the capital. Capital is the power for you to that increases your earning power. And if you look
at most people, they'll put their money in the stock market, but maybe only half?
No, 50% of Americans own zero capital. That has to change.
Meaning stocks and bonds.
Stocks and bonds. And so if we if we encourage the companies through incentives to give ownership to the company, to employees, so that way they have ownership in the company, I think we're going to create more capitalists, and that is going to address the issue. Because increasing the minimum wage, I have voted for that. Is constitutionally it changes the minimum wage every year based on the cost of living index.
Do you regret voting for the hikes in the minimum wage?
No, I think there is a fairness issue. We live in a very high cost of living state in New Jersey, and if you don't have $8, I don't see how you can make a living and pay for the insurance and all those things.
But now you say with the $15 raise, maybe this is the point where you look at a bigger picture, and it might be tax incentives to a lot of the companies to allow more stock ownership in their companies here. That's essentially what you're saying in the book, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So would you say, well, no more raising the minimum wage until you do something like that on the money side, the capital side?
I think the focus should be on creating more capital ownership. Right now, simply wages are not going to cut it, and that's what we advocate for in the book, myself and Vinnie Newsom.
And in the book, one of the interesting things is when you talk about the founding of the country, it's rather amusing to look at the founding fathers were probably more socialist than capitalist at the beginning of this country.
They were worried about that, how the capital is going to be concentrated in a few hands, and that
has come true.
That has come true.
It's
1%. 1% has owns most of the capital, and I think that has to change. And if you don't change, it's like a revolution. People are going to be left behind, and if they are not happy with it. And also, we need to have a very strong middle class for democracy to thrive.
All right. In fact, to your point, that is the theme, it seems, of this whole entire presidential campaign that's going on right now. Income disparity, and even the issue of my children can't pay off their debts because we're so indebted. So your book is timely. So The Third Way, it's a really good book talking about provocative themes here. The blend of socialism and capitalism. You got to come up with a better name for it. Socialism sounds scary to most Americans.
No, we call it inclusive capitalism.
Inclusive capitalism.
So broad-based ownership. You want to make more capitalists in a capitalistic society.
Inclusive capitalism. All right, very good. Thank you. We'll be right back. Next, inside Newark, writer Mark Bonamo offers a